Hello, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about how to stop resisting yourself in order to find peace in your life. Okay, so many of us have heard the saying, right? What we resist persists. And this saying it can be kind of silly, but to a degree, there is a level of truth to it, in the sense that a lot of the time when we are in resistance to what's happening to us in our lives, we are pushing away what circumstances we're in, the emotions we're feeling, what's going on in our bodies, what's going on in our minds, what's going on in our relationships, what's going on in our jobs. We are in a state where we are not able to proactively work through what's happening. Yeah? In the sense that, like, I don't like the idea that we're living in some sort of matrix where we're being tested, right? And this idea of, like, what you resist persists can really sound and feel like what we're saying is like there's this universal, you know, lesson teacher in the sky or something that's forcing us into these circumstances that feel terrible and that are awful, because that's usually why we're in resistance, because they don't, whatever we're resisting doesn't feel good. It's not what we want. It's not what we would choose. And we're just being forced to face it. And for some, reason, for our growth, for our expansion, and if we don't, we're being punished by having it just show up over and over and over again. And rather than thinking of it that way, rather than thinking of life as being like this big test that we are subjected to all the time, I think it can be better for us to even just start by looking at this concept of what we resist persists from a different vantage point, from a more loving and complex and compassionate vantage point, which is that we live in a cause and effect universe. Yes? That every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That we live in a world where what is happening for a reason. In the sense, and it's not always a magical reason that because the big daddy in the sky is trying to teach us a lesson, but it's just because there's a structure to how our reality works. And that structure is very complex. That structure is very complex. And some of the results that we get in life, some of the cause and effect that we are experiencing is due to our actions, the things that we are doing, our perceptions, and then how that affects the way that we think about ourselves, how that affects the way that we behave, the choices that we make, and all of these things. And we are being impacted and affected by the world at large, by the choices that other people around us are making, by the choices that our governments are making and corporations are making, and, like I say, our greater communities, our countries. We are living in a very complex reality where there are simply effects that are constantly happening based on the actions that we're taking and based on just the way that reality works. Okay? So we don't want to get into a state where we are trying to convince ourselves that everything that is happening because of us. That everything that is happening because of our choices, because of our thoughts, because of our energy, because of our vibration, because of some choice that we are making or not making, because of our perception, because of our energy, because of our manifestations. We have to understand that our lives are a complex mix of the choices of other people affecting us and our choices affecting us. All right? So that's why things happen. Because we live in a cause and effect universe. There's a structure to how this universe works. There are rules and laws to how things happen here. Right? Gravity, it is the same everywhere on Earth. It works the same because that is a law of this planet. And therefore, when we drop things, they fall to the ground. Cause and effect. That is why that happens. That's going to happen every time. We can resist that all we want, but it will persist because it's part of the cause and effect nature of our reality. Yes? So your life, what's happening in your life, everything that's happening in your life is a result of something that came before, either through your choices, the choices of other people, evolution, the way things have unfolded. Not everything is within your control. Not everything is because of you. Not everything is because of your choice. But everything is because of a law that exists here. And we don't understand all the laws. We don't understand, and we can't see all of the cause and effect. We are not able to perceive every little thing that has gone into why our circumstances are the way that they are. We can get a pretty good picture. We can get a pretty good idea. We have some pretty good understandings of why things are the way that they are on this planet. But it is not a perfect understanding, and it's probably never going to be a perfect understanding. Yes? So, we need to understand that before we get into anything spiritual, before we get into anything magical, before we get into any laws of spirituality, that we are living in a universe where what is happening to us is the result of a complex series of events that have taken place sometimes generations before we were born. And they are having an effect on us now. And our choices are affecting us. Okay? So we need to understand that reality is complex and not everything is because of us. Okay? If we are going to be able to get into a place where we have acceptance of reality, a big part of that for a lot of us is to accept that not everything is because of us. Not everything is because of a choice we have made. Not everything is due to us being something or not being something, doing something or not doing something, thinking something, having a vibration, attracting something. It is what it is. And it's not because of us. Okay? So with this being our foundation, that some things are because of us and some things are not because of us, this can sometimes be the thing that helps us come out of resistance to what's happening. All right? Because when we're in a state where we truly believe that everything is because of us, that everything is because of our vibration, our choice, our thoughts, our manifestations, we've manifested it, it's our life path, whatever, there can be a lot of pressure in that to accept everything as being the way that it should be, and that we're supposed to have some sort of positive attitude about it, and we're supposed to see it as good, and we're supposed to be grateful for it, and we're supposed to see the lesson in it or whatever. But it can also put us in a state where we are in a perpetual cycle of self-blame and shame that actually keeps us in resistance. Okay? So let's back up a little and let's start with where most of us are starting with, right? So when we are in a situation that we are in resistance to, when we are experiencing something that is painful and hard or confusing, where life is not going how we want it to go. So this can be a whole complex of things. Yes? This can be our physical health is failing in some way, or we're not able to control our bodies in the ways that we want to. And everything that we're doing to try to control our body isn't working. And we are in resistance to the way that our body is showing up. The illnesses that we have, or the way that our body looks, or it's reacting in some way, there's that. We can be in resistance to what's happening in our relationships, right? Someone's breaking up with us. Someone doesn't love us the way that we love them. We are in a maybe toxic relationship with our families, and we're continually trying to fix ourselves and change ourselves and be different, and it's not working, and we're not getting the love and we're not getting the support that we need. We're in resistance to what's happening in our jobs. Maybe we're not happy in our career and we don't know how to change it. We don't know how to find a career that would feel fulfilling for us. We feel trapped, we feel stuck, we feel like everything is not working, and we're just in resistance, right? Like there are a lot of ways that we can be in a state where we're just like, ugh, I hate this is not what I want. And for a lot of us, the kind of two tracks that we take are either to fight with reality, so to get into a position where we feel like, no, if I just keep applying what I think the solution is, right? If I just keep doing the same diet over and over and over again, because it theoretically, in my mind, should work to heal my body or to change my weight or to whatever it is. If I just keep doing it, if I just keep trying, if I just keep pushing, eventually I'm going to get the result that I want. If I keep, trying to manifest the love of my life, if I keep pushing forward with trying to change myself and fix myself and jump through all these spiritual hoops to be different, finally my family's going to love me, or I'm going to reach enlightenment, or I'm going to get out of this pain that I'm in, and everything's going to be great, right? There's that side of it where we feel like we have the answer and we truly think, I am just not doing it enough, I'm not going hard enough, I need to try harder. And the reason I'm not getting the results that I want is because I just need to do it more. Even though we've tried the same things over and over and over again and have experienced not getting the results that we want over and over and over again. Yes? So that's the first state. When we're in a state of resistance, we can tell that we're in a state of resistance because we're trying the same things over and over and over again to solve our problems, and it's not working. But we are in a state where we aren't able to admit to ourselves that it's not working, where we aren't able to admit that this isn't going to be the thing that fixes it, because either, like I say, in the beginning we get some little results, or we feel like we're empowered because we're taking action and we feel like we understand it and we have some sort of intellectual understanding and that feels good. And so we're convincing ourselves that we have the answer. And even though we're applying it over and over and over again and it's not getting us where we want to go, it's not getting us where we want to go sustainably, we're doing it over and over and over again. That's a state of resistance. Or we're denying what's happening. Right? We're just in a state where we're not really able to admit that what is happening, right? Many of us, we avoid going to the doctor because we don't want to hear the results. We don't want to know what's happening. We avoid having the tough conversation because we don't want to hear what we kind of know we're going to hear. We avoid going into work, we avoid doing the things we need to do. We're in a state where we're just kind of hoping that if we don't look at it and if we don't pay attention to it, it will go away. And for some of us, we go into a state of kind of like hopeless resignation, right? We just think, well, this is just how it is and there's nothing I can do and I just give up. And that is actually a form of resistance, is to just say, there's nothing I can do, there's no way forward, there's no answer, I'm just gonna kind of give up and lay down and assume that there's nothing I can do and there's no hope. And anytime someone comes up to us with a possible solution or a possible step we can take, we can figure out a way that won't work and that we shouldn't bother trying that and that's just going to make it worse and all of these things. And that's another state of resistance, is that we assume we have no power, we assume there is no way, and that every step that we could take wouldn't work anyways, so why bother? Yes? And these are the kind of ways that we resist reality. And again, when we are in pain, it makes sense that we are in resistance. When we are in pain, it makes sense that we don't want to look at it, that we want to feel like we have the solution and we just need to keep trying harder and doing it more and thinking that eventually it will work if we do it enough. Or to think that there just simply isn't a solution, that there's nothing we can do and there is no way forward, so that we don't have to feel like we're failing or like we're doing something wrong, or like, you see what I'm saying? We don't have to feel like we have to take a risk to try something and put energy towards something that may not work. We just let ourselves off the hook by just saying, no, I know nothing's going to work, there is no solution, and therefore it just is what it is. This makes sense. Okay? We want to feel like we have the answer and we just need to try harder because that makes us feel empowered. Or we want to feel like there is no answer because that makes us feel like it's not our fault and we don't have to take a risk of trying something that might not work, and all the vulnerability and fear and stuff that comes up with that. Or we deny it. I'm not going to look at it. I don't want to see it. I'm going to pretend that it doesn't exist and I'm going to hope that it goes away. This is how we live a life where we're going to get stuck in our pain. Because it is true that in the long run, what we resist, what we deny, what we pretend isn't happening, is going to continue to happen because of what we said at the beginning of the video. It's happening for a reason. Yes, things that are perpetually happening are not flukes. It's not just a thing that's random. It has a cause. There is a reason. And it's going to keep happening until that cause has changed. Right? If you are putting your hand on a burner, you are going to keep getting burned every single time you put your hand on the burner. No matter how your energy is, no matter what your vibration is, no matter what you shift or change about your mindset, because of the way this planet works, if you put your hand on a burner that's on, you are going to get burned. And the only way to stop yourself getting burned is to stop putting your hand on the burner. Right? Cause and effect. But if we believe that there's a way that we can manifest our way out of getting burned, right? If we are truly convinced that the burn is happening because we just aren't thinking right, or we aren't manifesting correctly, or we have something wrong in our vibration, and we continue to try to change our vibration and our thinking, every time we put our hand on the burner, we're still going to get burned. because it's not our vibration. It's not our thinking. That's the problem. You see? So this is why doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is a form of resistance. Because it's saying, I am not getting the results that I want from taking the actions that I'm taking. And instead of being able to say, okay, I must need to take different action, it must be that these actions are not the actions that are actually going to make things better. We are saying, I just need to do it more, and it'll work eventually. That's resistance. We want to believe we have the answer, but if it's not working, if we keep putting our hand on the burner, no matter how much we change our vibration, we still get burned. We have to admit we're wrong, and that can be really hard. Okay? Second thing, if we put our hand on the burner and then we just keep pretending that we're not getting burned, the burn is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. This is another thing. A lot of us really believe that if we don't look at something long enough, if we avoid it, if we try to skirt around it, that state of resistance, that it will go away, that it will fix itself, that it will magically stop being that way. And generally speaking in life, chaos accumulates. Pain accumulates. Things don't tend to just get better on their own, right? Like that saying that time heals all wounds. Generally speaking, time doesn't do anything to heal anything. It depends on what we're doing with that time. That determines whether things degrade more or get better. And a lot of us, again, with the denial, it's because we feel incapable of solving the problem. We don't feel like we have the answer. And therefore, we just want to pretend that it doesn't exist and hope that it will just go away. Because of course, that's easier than looking at it and admitting that it's happening and then having to deal with everything that comes up when we look at something really hard and painful and we feel like we don't have a solution, right? And then again, that hopelessness, that there is no answer, that I'm putting my hand on the burner and I'm getting burnt and this is just how it is, there's nothing I can do, is that, I don't have an answer. I'm looking at it, I'm seeing it, but I don't know what to do. And I'm letting myself off the hook of trying to figure out what to do by saying, I don't believe there is an answer. Okay? So, like I say, these are all the ways that we tend to deny reality. And when we do that, like I say, because we are continuing to put our hand on a burner, and because of the cause and effect nature of our reality, we are going to keep getting burned every single time we put our hand on the burner. There is no way around it. We can't change our vibration and apply a solution that isn't a solution. That's not going to fix it. We can't keep putting our hand on the burner and just denying that it's being burned and eventually get to a place where it's not burning us anymore. That's not going to fix it. And we can't be hopeless and say there is no solution. I'm just going to be burned for the rest of my life. Because then we will. We actually will, right? If we just say there is nothing I can do and I'm just going to surrender to this, it will just keep getting burned and keep getting worse, and that'll be what it is. So, all of this is to demonstrate that when we feel like we don't have the answer to our pain, that is when and where we go into resistance. When we don't have the immediate solution, when we don't know what to do, that is why we go into one of these ways of resisting. Right? Because you'll notice in your life, when problems arise that you know how to solve, when things happen to you that are painful or hard, but that you have the solution to, you tend not to go into resistance. You tend to just apply the solution, right? Even when something is really hard and really painful and really overwhelming, that would send other people into a state of resistance, you just apply your solution and then you feel better. And so that it doesn't send you into a state of resistance, right? The reason we go into resistance is because we are in a state where we are in pain, we are struggling, we are suffering on some level, and we don't have the solution. We can't make it go away right now. And as simple and as like, whoa, yeah, of course, that most of us don't think of it this way, right? And this is why we want to go into understanding that when we are in a state of resistance, we need to come into a state of self-compassion, right? That this really is going to be the first step to finding our solutions, okay? So the real reason, the entire reason we go into resistance, this is why we do it every single time we do it, is because we are in pain, we are not getting the results that we want, and we don't know how to fix it. That is why we go into a state of resistance. I'm in pain, I'm struggling, I'm not getting what I want, and so I'm going to either believe that I already have the solution and keep pushing that. I'm going to deny it and not look at it and hope that it just goes away. Or I'm going to give up and assume there is no solution. That is our psychology in 27 minutes, right? That is what resistance is. So, this is why when we notice that we are in one of these three states, something is happening to me, and I'm either doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I know that something's going on and I'm not looking at it. I'm doing the denial thing. I'm pretending something that clearly exists doesn't exist. I'm trying to convince myself it doesn't exist. Or I'm trying to convince myself there is no solution. The first thing we need when we're in that state is for ourselves to say, okay, I'm in pain. I'm scared. I don't know what this thing is going to mean for my life, right? So especially if we're in a state of denial, we tend to be, if I were to look at this and I'm afraid of what this is going to mean for my life. I'm afraid of what this is going to mean for my future. I'm afraid of what this means about me. And we'll get into that in a second. But that first thing that we want to acknowledge and validate is that we are scared and we're hurting and we don't know how to make it better right now. Okay? So instead of trying to get to a place where we're stopping being in resistance, which is what most spiritual people, self-help, personal growth tell us to do, right? Accept it, look at it, find the solution, get out of resistance, otherwise it's going to keep persisting, change your vibration, blah, 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 blah. We first need to validate that we're in resistance for a reason. And that reason is we are in pain and we are scared and we don't know how to fix it. And just that, for most of us, is already going to shift the way that we feel and the way that we're responding to the situation. This is why learning to stop resisting ourselves is the first step of getting out of resistance. Because once we're in resistance, We don't want to then create more resistance on top of the resistance. We don't want to then start fighting with ourselves and saying we should feel differently, we should do something different, we should just keep hammering our solution and hope that it works one day. Right? The resistance piles up and piles up and piles up. So we want to stop that cycle by saying, okay, if I take a step back and I broaden my perspective, I can validate that I'm in resistance for a good reason. I'm in pain, I'm scared, and I don't know how to fix it. And that is okay. That is normal. That is natural. That is how humans function. So I want to invite you, even just right now, if you have an area in your life right now where you are in resistance, so you're doing one of those 3 things that we just talked about. You're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. You're in denial and you're not looking at something and you're hoping it'll just go away. Or you're in that state of hopelessness. And a caveat another point that I want to add here is this is a big part of the work that I do in coaching and all of these things, because that first phase, that first way that we can go into resistance, and I really want to talk about it here, so pay attention. One of the ways that we do that, the doing the same thing over and over and over again to try to fix the problem, one of the biggest ways this shows up is in self-help and self-improvement, where we perpetually and continually believe that if I just fix myself, if I fix my vibration, if I get the perfect job, if I get my body to be the way that it is, that I want it to be, if I find the perfect relationship, if I fix this problem that I have with my family, if I change my vibration, if I become enlightened, if I change my life, change my thoughts, change whatever I think is wrong with me, this is going to be the thing that changes my life and gets me out of the pain that I'm in. That is a form of the first state of resistance. This is why I say shame, blame, and guilt are always lies. Because what we are going to find when we are in that perpetual state of we have our scapegoat, right? Every one of us has our scapegoat of we really believe when we are in pain, when something is going on in our lives that doesn't feel good, that we automatically go to, it's because I don't have the job, it's because I don't have the relationship, it's because I don't have the body, it's because I'm not spiritually awakened enough, it's because of this, because of that, that's wrong with me. And this is the thing that I truly believe, if I were to fix this thing, if I were to get this thing, this would be the thing that would fix everything for me. That is the biggest form of resistance that most of us are in, that we live in for most of our lives, and we never see it because it makes perfect sense to us that the reason I am in pain is because there's this thing that's wrong with me, and if I fix this thing, everything will get better. And so a lot of us, again, we don't even recognize that we're doing this. We don't recognize that we're in resistance. We don't even recognize that we're in pain, or we can't identify the pain we're actually in, because it's so automatic and so natural for us to go into self-help and self-improvement and scapegoating onto whatever part of our lives we blame all of our pain on, that we don't even notice that we're in pain. We don't even notice what pain we're in. Right? So much of the work that I do with people is, okay, if you were to get that thing, if your body were to be perfected, if you were to get the job, if you were to get the relationship, what do you think that would give you? And for so many people, what they realize is that what they're actually wanting is love and connection and safety. They're wanting provision. They want, right, safety in their life. They want to have the capacity and the freedom to explore the things they want to explore and to express themselves in the way that they want to express themselves. And they have all of this pain and all of this anger and sadness and grief about the ways that they were treated in their childhood and the ways that they were abused and abandoned and how they internalized all of that and have blamed it on themselves their whole lives. And there's this whole deeper layer, this whole undercurrent of pain that comes from us not having been supported in who we are and not being given the tools to develop who we are and to live a life that actually feels good for us, because we have been forced into these, cultural ways of being that don't feel good and ways of working that don't feel good. And our caregivers told us we weren't allowed to be who and what we were, and they didn't provide us with a secure connection, and so we had to grow up way too fast, and we have all this fear and shame and panic around providing for ourselves, and just there are all of these layers that we don't know how to address and that we're trying to address through self-help. We're trying to address it through trying to fix ourselves. And so we're in a state of resistance to the actual pain we're feeling. And we don't even see it. We don't see the pain we're feeling. We don't know that we're sad. We don't know that we're angry with our caregivers. We don't know that we have all this stuff we want to express that we're not able to express. We don't even know what that is that we want to express. All we know is we think, if I could just get the job, if I could just get the relationship, if I could just get the body, if I could just, raise my vibration enough and not get triggered by my family and all this stuff, I'm going to feel how I want to feel. And for most of us, like I say, it actually boils down to, I didn't get the love that I wanted. I didn't get the safety that I wanted, and I'm not able to express myself the way that I want to express myself. That's why I'm in pain. And then if we look at the things that we resist in life, all of them are going to boil down to these things as well, right? We resist the diagnosis because it means I'm not safe and I'm not going to get to express myself the way that I want to express myself, and I'm going to have pain that I don't want to be in. We resist the disconnection of the relationship because it feels to us like then we're going to lose love, we're going to lose security, we're going to lose safety. We resist the job situation because to us it means not having provision, not having safety, not having what we need to be alive, not being able to express ourselves, right? All of our pain as a human being tends to come down to, I'm afraid and I'm in resistance to this thing that's happening because I believe it's going to take love away. I'm going to be alone forever and disconnected. I believe, or it truly is, going to take provision away. I'm not going to be safe. I'm not going to have my needs met. I'm going to be in pain. I'm not going to be able to express myself. I'm not going to be able to do the things that I really want to do and that feel good for me to do. And then my life is going to fall apart and just feel shitty. These are the things that make us feel shitty. These are the reasons we go into resistance. I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to be safe. I'm not going to get to express myself. Yeah? That is why we go into resistance. So this is why when we catch ourselves in our patterns of resistance, the first thing we need to do is to stop resisting ourselves. And the way we do that is we say, okay, whatever is happening, it's making me feel like I'm losing love, I'm losing safety, and I'm losing the capacity to express myself. And that feels shitty, and I hate it. and I don't like it, and I'm in resistance. And that makes sense. I am a human, just like everybody else. And when these things happen, that is our natural response. Doesn't that feel better than any of the other kind of spiritual things that people tell us to do when we're in a state of resistance? To just start by saying, I'm in resistance for a reason. I'm in resistance because I'm afraid I'm going to lose love. I'm afraid I'm going to lose provision. I'm going to be stuck in pain, and I'm not going to be able to express myself. That is why I am self-helping and scapegoating and doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's why I'm not willing to look at it. That's why I'm not willing to believe that there might be a solution. And then the last thing, right, is the shame, blame, and guilt. We're afraid that if we look at it, if we really admit to what it is, that we're going to find out that it's our fault on some level. For a lot of us, especially those of us who go into denial or hopelessness, there's that fourth element of we are afraid that if we find the real cause, that if we look at the real thing that is the reason this is happening, that it's going to be because of us. That we did something wrong, we made a bad decision, we are the reason it's happening. And then we go into a state of shame, blame, and guilt that we would rather just deny. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to think about it. I would rather just pretend it's not happening. Because I don't want to feel like it's my fault. Because we don't know how to process having agency, not knowing something, having made a mistake, or, that the pain that we're in could be because of us on some level. We don't know how to process that in an empowered way. We don't know how to process that in an empowered way. We have rather a childhood way of looking at it, which is if something bad is happening and I'm in pain and that I'm part of the reason for that, that means I'm fundamentally bad. That means I am fundamentally broken. That means I am fundamentally guilty. And we don't have tools for processing that. And we get stuck in that cycle of shame rather than being able to say, oh, okay, no. Just because I have power, just because I have choice, just because there is something I could do to make this better, doesn't mean I should have already known. I should have known better. I am fundamentally fucked up or bad. It just means I'm a human who didn't know something that I know now. We don't have the tools to process our shame. So this is why, again, the real first step to getting out of resistance is to not be in resistance to ourselves. So we accept and we validate that we're in pain, that we're scared, and that makes sense. And then we need to move into another state of saying, even if I'm part of the problem, even if I'm part of the cause, this doesn't mean that I'm fundamentally guilty, bad, sinful, wrong, shameful on any level. This is the message we need to send ourselves. It's okay that I'm in resistance. It makes sense. I'm a human. This is how humans respond when we're in pain. And even if I find out that there is something that I could be doing to shift the way things are, that doesn't mean that I'm fundamentally to blame for this. That doesn't mean that this is all my fault. And that doesn't mean that I'm fundamentally bad. It just means I'm a human, like everybody else, in this complex cause and effect universe who didn't know what I didn't know before I knew it. That is what we need to do when we are in a state of resistance. It's okay that I'm scared. It's not all my fault. And even if there is something that I can do about it, that does not mean that I am fundamentally bad and wrong. How does that feel right now in your body? If you think about anything you're in resistance to right now, rather than trying to get yourself to accept it, rather than trying to force yourself to look at it, rather than trying to get into a place where you're ready to face it, or you're looking for solutions, or whatever it is, or you're ready to stop doing the thing you've always done, the scapegoating, and trying to make it better by trying to force your solution that isn't working. How does it feel to just say, yeah, no, I'm in pain, and I don't like this, and I want it to change? And to just make room for those emotions. How does it feel to just let yourself say, even if I find out that there's something that I can do to make this different, that doesn't mean this is my fault. That doesn't mean I am the cause. That doesn't mean I need to have shame, blame, or guilt about this. Because I'm just a human like everybody else. And I only know what I know now because I am going through what I'm going through. How does that feel? Okay? And then the next part is to really get out of that childhood mindset that tells us that everything that is happening to us is because of us on some reason, on some level, for some reason. This is another thing that puts us into a state of resistance immediately, is to believe that everything is because of us. Because on the one hand, again, we've talked about this a lot, right? The childhood coping mechanism is to say, everything that's happening to me is because of me and my behavior on some level. Because on the one hand, that makes us feel empowered. If I can fix myself, I can fix everything in my life. That's what we believe. That's why we want to hold on to that idea, that everything is because of us on some level. But for a lot of us, again, that creates massive resistance because it puts us into a state of shame and blame and guilt. And then we just say, I don't want to look at anything because I can't deal with it. If it is my fault, then that means that I'm fundamentally fucked up and I don't know how to fix myself. I don't know how to change myself. And therefore, my life is going to be painful forever. So we need to take a step back and say, not everything is because of us, right? I know when we get a diagnosis, we want to say, it was my diet, it was my thinking, it was my this and my that. Because we want to believe then that if we change that stuff, we can heal anything. We want to believe that if I just, do enough inner work, this person that I love will come back to me. If I just get the right job, I'll have security forever. We truly want to believe that if I fix myself enough, if I look for how this is my fault enough, I have perfect control over it. And a lot of us need to actually hear, this isn't all your fault. Your life is not 100% because of you. Sometimes, and this, again, can be really, really challenging. Okay? Sometimes we're in a state of resistance and we're blaming and shaming and guilting ourselves and doing all the self-help and all that stuff because it's hard for us to admit, I have a chronic illness that I might not be able to fix. And when we start to have that compassion for ourselves and say, this isn't all my fault, I'm so sorry you're in this pain, we have to face, oh my God, then maybe I can't fix it. So we actually want to stay in resistance and keep believing, no, it's just me. I'm just not doing the diet right. I'm just not disciplined enough. This is my fault that I'm in pain. We want to stay in that shame, blame, and guilt because that feels more empowering, right? It feels like, well, then that means if I fix it, if I just get disciplined enough, if I just get my diet right, if I just do all the things, I can get rid of this pain. We don't want to say, I have compassion for myself. This isn't all my fault. Maybe I don't have complete control over this, and therefore I'm going to be in pain. Or I'm going to have to look for different solutions other than trying to fix myself. Right? A lot of us want to hold on to the idea that it's all because of us. Because when we let go of that, it means admitting, I have pain because my caregiver's made a mess in my life that I now have to clean up, right? Maybe I have CPTSD. And this is a big part of the reasons why my relationships don't work and why I have anxiety all the time. And it's not just because I'm failing to do my self-care and not using nonviolent communication enough. I have processing I have to do from damage that came from the people around me. Maybe we have to then admit that part of the reason we're struggling and suffering and in pain is because of how society works. And we don't have complete control over that. We don't have control over that at all sometimes. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes we're in resistance because admitting that things are bigger than us, admitting that we were hurt and harmed in ways that we now have to clean up, that we have to process all of these emotions, that we have to admit we're never going to have the families that we wanted, we're never going to have the safety that we wanted, we can't improve ourselves enough that our caregivers will actually be able to show up for us, we can't self-improve enough to get rid of our mental health diagnosis, we can't self-improve enough to get rid of our health problems, we can't deny it enough, that some things are just not because of us and not within our control. And the actual solution is going to be learning how to support ourselves within the painful, shitty thing we're in versus fixing ourselves to try to make the painful thing go away. It's a big deal. Right? Sometimes coming into the actual reality of what we're facing, that something is bigger than us, that healing is going to take longer and be harder than we thought it was because it's a whole generational thing versus just us not being good enough, or because it's society that's affecting us, or because we have a mental health diagnosis that we didn't choose, or a physical health problem that we didn't choose, or we are a certain way that is just judged by our caregivers or judged by society, and we are never going to be able to change that. And our two options are going to be to express ourselves and be rejected, or not express ourselves and be in pain. Sometimes the bigness of what we're looking at is really hard to accept. And that's why the next thing is allowing ourselves to be upset about what's happening. Instead of trying to convince yourself, to stop doing your habits or whatever it is, to try to get yourself out of resistance. You admit that you're in resistance. You admit that it's because you're in pain and you don't know how to get out. You realize that you are not the cause of everything and not everything is your fault and you need compassion. And then you let yourself be upset. You let yourself blame your caregivers. You let yourself be upset at society. You let yourself be upset at the cause of this. This is the thing that a lot of the spirituality, personal growth, self-help people tell us not to do. Don't get angry, don't get sad, don't get into your, but this is, no. We have to validate our emotions. You are allowed to be upset about the abuse that you suffered that permanently affected the way that you see the world. You are allowed to be upset about the structures of our society that are harming you. You are allowed to be upset that you don't have a healthy, able body. You are allowed to be upset about the circumstances that happened instead of being upset with yourself. Instead of going into shame and denial, and instead of going into self-improvement, can you just let yourself be upset at the circumstances and not blame yourself? Even if there is a role that you have played, you will find that out. If there are steps you can take, you will find those steps. I promise you, you won't stay in the anger, sad, grief, blame phase forever. But for a lot of us, we have to go through that phase. We have to get really angry at our caregivers. We have to get really angry at society. We have to get really sad about the things that happen to us. And we have to process these emotions. And then we're going to start to find our steps and our solutions for how we can either fix things that we can fix, or how we can support ourselves within the shitty situations that we can't change. Because that's where we get to eventually when we come out of resistance, is accepting the things that are happening and then either looking for where we can do things differently, take different steps that will actually work, the steps that we can take to improve things without going into shame and blame and guilt and without going into self-improvement. We work from a place of self-support instead. What do I need to be supported to work through this pain? When we start to come from that perspective, that's when we are stepping out of resistance. Right? When we're in denial or when we're in, I just need to fix myself, that's resistance. When we're in, okay, this painful thing is happening, what do I need to feel supported? That is how we come out of, that is when we are out of resistance. And usually the way that we get there is by ending the resistance we have against ourselves. We admit we're in pain and we're scared and we don't know how to fix it. We acknowledge that it's not all because of us. We let ourselves get upset at the bigger, larger circumstances that led to what's happening to us. And then we look for how we can support ourselves versus how we can fix ourselves. Does this make sense? So when you're in pain, when you're in resistance, when you're in your patterns, don't try and force yourself out of your patterns. Don't try to force yourself to look at it. Admit that you're in resistance. Admit that it makes sense. Let yourself be upset at the circumstances that are not your fault. See that we live in a complex universe and that not everything is because of you. And then start looking for your steps from a place of self-support and being on your own side. Okay? So that's my talk on coming out of resistance. I hope that was helpful. I hope it was different than what other people have given you, and I hope that it helps. It's not all your fault. Not everything is because of you. You're allowed to be upset. You will find your empowered steps from a place of self-support once you let yourself be upset. Okay? Okay. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concern, you can leave them in the comments. You can send me ideas, come join the mystery school, reach out for coaching, whatever you want. Watch other people's videos, watch all my free videos. Got lots on my website. All the links are down below or in my link tree. All right. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself. And I'll see you later.